Obviously, everybody's got a thought on this. I want to get your reaction to what you heard yesterday from President Biden. And before I get your thoughts on what you heard in this weird little speech that he gave, in which he proclaimed that he is taking the blame for everything, that the buck stops with him, and then proceeded to blame everybody but him, claiming that he and they have had contingency plans for all of these things. Nothing is a surprise, et cetera, et cetera. A reporter on Sky News out of the UK put it this way: Biden is utterly unfit to be the president of the United States, and it blows my mind how world leaders suck up to such an intellectually bereft individual. I want to follow that, or rather, Mike Gibbons, that followed a comment on Sunday from the former ambassador to Afghanistan under Barack Obama, Ryan Crocker, who is, again, an Obama ambassador. He worked with the Obama-Biden administration for 8 years. He said on Sunday, Brian Crocker did, that he has absolutely no faith in Joe Biden's ability to be the commander-in-chief of the United States military, and that either he was incompetent and did not know what was going to happen with the Taliban, or B, he did know what was going to happen and just didn't care. That's an awful lot of strong language from, in Crocker's case, people who were actually supportive of Joe Biden. So with that as your backdrop, Mike Gibbons, what's your reaction?
Well, I think everybody with any opinion on the matter, I think, believed that we should move out of Afghanistan. It wasn't working. People want to compare it to Germany and Japan and Korea. It's not the same situation. And, it's a different culture. We went into Afghanistan largely because Al-Qaeda was using it as the base to attack the U.S. and our interests. We went in there, much different than Germany. We stayed in Germany because there were Nazis all over the place, and we couldn't let them, return to power. We went through the Marshall Plan, and they are a Western civilization. They actually believed we were trying to do what was in the best interest of the German people, and they became an ally. Similar to Japan. Japan's culture, although Asian, is very different from Afghanistan. We're looking at fundamentalists to the greatest degree, Muslims in Afghanistan, and we don't understand those people in the United States. We don't get it. So we went in, we won, we pushed the Taliban out, and what we thought for a while was, let's get out. I think Bush actually considered getting out, maybe leaving a remnant of our forces there. But then we had democratic governments, and they are into changing the world. And it then became more important about what women's rights were in Afghanistan than the real reason we were there. And we kind of, lost our direction. Trump came back in. Everybody says Trump lies. Trump told the truth. They would then bend his words into something that was offensive. I just read this book by Kendi, How to Become an Anti-Racist or whatever. There isn't one truthful quote in the whole book, and 2 million copies of this have sold. There's this narrative out there, and a lot of it comes down to the fact that I believe, and I still believe, that Donald Trump understood how we should have a place in these various countries where we have bases. I don't have a problem having a force in Germany. It's a good balance to the proximity of Russia. But and the original purposes are no longer even there. The original purposes were to maintain control of the country after World War II. But I do believe that Germany should pay for that protection, and that's what Donald Trump was trying to get him to do. And when he did it, it offended the world, it offended the Democrats, it offended everybody. He was right on. Same thing with Korea. Same thing with Japan. Our forces there prevent effectively an invasion. The history of the world is a series of invasions. The Democrats have never read a history book. So right now it wasn't a matter of when we left. That decision had been made. Donald Trump had made that decision, but it was how we left. And this was the most poorly
let me jump
handled
in. Let me jump in here, Mike. Let me jump
Yes.
in before you get into the horrific handling of how we left, because you're right. That's what this is all about. But since we're having the discussion, and I think the entire country is having the discussion now about the decision that you just laid out to get out.
Mm-hmm.
I get it about the culture there being different, something that perhaps we can't understand, and maybe they don't understand Western culture and American culture. I get all of that, but there were a lot of similarities from what you just said as to why we needed to stay, for example, in Germany.
I agree.
To now. And you said, there's Nazis floating all about, and we had to make sure that they couldn't reconstitute themselves and form a party and take back over again, so we had to stay there to do that. Couldn't we say the same thing? There are Taliban all about. We ran them off. We ejected them from power. We tried to provide some security while the Afghani people elected their own government. And we're just a security force there while they built their security force, 300,000 strong, helped them build an air force because there's Taliban all about. Right. Isn't it kind of similar? And then secondly, President Bush delivered a statement today, I guess it was today or maybe last night, essentially doing what he should do, and that is, of course, paying tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice in getting rid of the Taliban. Isn't it kind of a slap in their faces? 2,448, I think, is the last number that I saw, Mike. Americans lost their lives getting rid of the Taliban because the Taliban supported and trained and funded Al-Qaeda, who hit us on 9/11. Yes. To 20 years later have the Taliban pick right back up where they left off, isn't that just a slap at those who lost their lives, as if they lost it for nothing?
Well, we've spent an ungodly amount of money there. Afghanistan is not Germany. Afghanistan is not Japan. They're still living in caves. And yes, they used it as a base to attack us. But you just said it. Now, most people don't realize that the last combat death in Afghanistan was in early 2000. So we haven't been faced with having our soldiers be shipped back to the United States in caskets out of Afghanistan. But the cost, I think at some point we need to be fiscally responsible, and the cost of maintaining this base in Afghanistan was just too much. And it kind of flies in the face of, are we going to be the world's policeman everywhere in the world? I could make a strong case that we should have left some remnant base there, and that could respond to Taliban advances. And frankly, I would still make that case. But as I said, everybody had decided. I'm not making that decision. Everybody had decided it was time to go.
Right.
And so I'm not saying necessarily agree with that, because that's a whole topic of discussion that we probably don't have time for, and I could make a case why we should have stayed.
Well, here's a follow up to that topic. So while you finish this off, before we talk about the blundering of the withdrawal here, Mike, the follow up would be is what if, as the Taliban takes back over again, they continue with the same thing they were doing 20 years ago. They fund Al-Qaeda. Remember, Bagram Air Base was overrun.
Absolutely.
There were 5,000 prisoners being held there, almost all of them Al-Qaeda. They're now free. So just for the sake of discussion, Mike, if we're talking to Mike Gibbons, by the way, if you just turn the radio on, he's a candidate for the United States Senate, the Republican primary. If they go back to business as usual and they start committing attacks against America, our allies, or American interests, is the next president or is this current president going to have to send another battalion in? Are we going to send just thousands of troops back in to start this whole thing all over again? Because that's the choice I think we're left with here: maintain a force there to try to stop it from happening in the first place, or eventually, when they do what they always do, we're going to have to go back again.
Bob, we've changed and it probably started, with the Vietnam War, but the overwhelming force that we would have used in World War II, which we did, we don't use that anymore. It's almost like a police action every time we go into these places. Yeah, we gain a foothold, and then it becomes a police action. We have to be feared as a nation. they have to realize that if they kidnap or kill an American, they are going to pay dearly. And unfortunately, our rules of engagement don't allow us to respond to those things. And we can do a lot of it, remotely now. But the idea of overwhelming force, I believe, and I think you saw a little bit of that with Soleimani when Trump just said enough of this. And we cannot go in and act like we're policemen. We have to go in and act like we're going to make them pay.
Right.
And we don't do that.
No.
And I can tell you, if I had a way of changing that, I would. I think what Trump did in Syria with ISIS is exactly what has to happen. Go in, the heck with the rules of engagement. If you're opposing us, you're shot. That's not what we're doing right now. Everything's according to this new age kind of approach to warfare, where we're not quite sure if they're going to shoot us, even though they had a gun. So we got to wait until they do shoot us. And I can tell you that's not my philosophy. It wouldn't be my philosophy if I was in charge. I think Donald Trump said that.
It's the philosophy of the left. It's the same thing with domestic. It's the same thing with domestic war fighting or crime fighting, if you will, with police officers.
Yes.
You pretty much can't shoot unless you're shot at. If you do, you're going to be strung up or you're going to be imprisoned because how dare you? So it's the same thing. We put these handcuffs on our cops on the domestic side, and we put these handcuffs on our troops.
Perfect.
And we send them out into battle, and it's terrible. Mike, I apologize. We didn't get to the other part. Let's do that part now. Let's talk about the withdrawal and what you heard from Biden yesterday, in which he basically said it's everybody's fault but mine. But, oh, by the way, the buck stops here.
Right. I mean, that's what his usual answer is. I can tell you it's obvious. Everybody in the United States knows it, be they Democrats or Republicans. The man's incompetent. When it comes right down to it, it's our military people that were going to set up the plan. They recommended it to him. I can't believe that Joe Biden, in the, unfortunately demented state that he's in, ordered the military to do what happened. I think there was a lot of complicity at the top here. But it strikes me that we are able to, and I think we said this in a release, but strategically move millions, maybe not millions, it's an exaggeration, 1 million illegal immigrants around this country in unmarked planes and buses, and drop them off all over our country, and they're illegal. I mean, they shouldn't be here. Yet we've ignored maybe 100,000 people that have assisted us as allies in Afghanistan. It's embarrassing. It's betrayal, and somebody should pay. And we've got to get those people out of there. Last question for you, Mike, about those people. Should they be brought to the United States, given the fact that we are letting all these other illegals in? These are people who helped us, who supported us, who maybe saved lives in many cases. These people are America's people. I know Matt Zeller, who is an Army lieutenant, said these are our people. They literally worked alongside of us and helped save our lives. We owe them. Should we bring them here? Well, I think all the NATO countries should, according to their level of involvement, share in that. And I think there's an intention there. I think Macron is already taking some Afghanis to France. I think they should be divided up. I don't believe in bringing masses of individuals and concentrating them in an area in an already established American culture. It's just a recipe for disaster in the future. But yes, I think we should bring them to the United States, and if not, we should make sure they're in a place where they're safe. I don't know how many there are. And there's still thousands of Americans.
It's around what you said. I believe, from what I've read and been listening to, it's around 100,000 or so. And I think those are individuals who helped and their families. You've got to look out for them too, because all of their families, if they are left behind, will be made to pay a horrible price before their deaths, just because that's what these murderers do. Mike Gibbons, an American success story, a Northeast Ohio success story, a very successful businessman. He is a candidate for the U.S. Senate race, or in the U.S. Senate seat, rather, in the primary race, along with a